PR Connections Radio presents.
There's a piece we've written talking about love as a foundation for social justice, right? Which includes what you just said. I love that Corinthians piece. I think it's just beautiful. In the it's more than just an emotion, right, or a personal feeling. It's a powerful, active force, as you said, discipline and potentiality for pursuing various forms of liberation, which can build a foundation of belonging for all. Social justice manifests through individual and collective power and love joining together and apart, right? Because I think there's a Eurocentric propensity. Let's all agree, right? And then we'll
absolutely,
as opposed to, and the pieces that are different kind of get pushed to the side, which is part of my impulse around the religious and spiritual piece.
Next time, can we talk a little bit more about the discipline of love and do some?
Absolutely.
Hey, we are going to do just that. We're going to talk about the discipline of love. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a great day. I'm thinking right now, was I supposed to do a soft opening? Whatever, I'm going in. Anyway, welcome, a big welcome. I'm so happy that we're here to take another breath today. It feels like the best of times and the worst of times. You know what I mean? For so many. Dickinson, that was Charles Dickinson, was it? I quoted that. Anyway, welcome to Voices of Humanity at prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. I feel privileged to be your host, Sandra McKechnie. And I do trainings, learnings called Double Consciousness. It has everything to do with those that came through the time warp many years ago, hundreds of years ago. People that came across the transatlantic slave trade, sub-Saharan trade, how they show up, apartheid, colonization, those people that got affected with all of this, imperialism, etc., and how they show up, why they show up. And I'm also a certified life coach, and that is an amazing work as well. And I'm so happy that you could join us. We have a great guest for you today. I'm going to read a little blurb. First, I wanted to say something. I was coming home today from work, and something dawned on me. And I'm going to be 60 in November 1st, right? Celebrate with me. It's an amazing place to be in my life right now, because I feel like I'm giving birth to this person that I'm called to become, that I'm supposed to be. And it's hard, but it's wonderful. It's wonderful, right? Because I'm experiencing such favor in myself. I'm becoming the person that I'm called to be. I feel like I'm giving birth to that person. So it's a wonderful feeling. I was meditating on that today. And we want to talk about love. We want to continue to talk about love and social justice, and love being this discipline, just looking at putting the warm, fuzzy feelings aside that we think is love, that stimulates us, and we get into not so great relationships. So we want to talk about that today. And I just wanted to welcome you warmly and say how great it is that you are here. And I'm just going to read the little blurb that we put together for the show. Is love by force? Join us again. And this is the again. Thank you for coming. Join us again for our topic on love and social justice, how to navigate the discipline of love and social justice in the midst of shared humanity. Boy, do we need some of that, right? Let's look at the desire to be treated with respect and dignity. Why do you sometimes feel like a second-class citizen? Lorrie and I welcome you. Come on down, Lorrie, to another great episode of Voices of Humanity. Here you are joining us, and we're grateful. Lorrie Simonovic, come on down. We do get together, right, before this. We have some good times. Sometimes we think we should take those and put them on the show. And we probably will start doing that, because we have some wonderful moments talking about this. We're very different, but we're very sympathetic in many areas, right? Am I right? Am I speaking out of school?
I don't know.
This is Lorrie Simonovic. I think I heard you say this is our 14th show?
Yes.
Yeah, this has been great. And we really we ended that last little clip we showed you was kind of segued into love as a discipline. And I really never looked at it that way. We've got some really amazing, we got some meat and potatoes, some ackee and saltfish. You can see I love food. And that's the only way I can describe some of this information. So Lorrie, here we are. That I did the intro, our learning objectives. We keep putting those forward now that we're getting I think we're getting a rhythm to the show, you know?
Right. The last 6 or 7 shows, we've really been focusing a lot. And please come in with your thoughts too. The first one is developing a critical understanding of the history and impact of Eurocentricity. And in a few of the other shows, we define that. And basically, Eurocentricity is making all things Western European central. And there's a tendency for a Eurocentric approach to put all things non to the margins. And this learning objective involves examining the roots of Eurocentric thinking, its relationship to colonialism and imperialism, and its impact on groups that are even today being pushed to the margins and are being codified as non-European cultures. By gaining a deeper understanding of Eurocentricity and its effects, we as learners, and of course include myself, can begin to identify and challenge Eurocentric assumptions and biases such as severe capitalism, racial capitalism, white supremacy, imperialism, patriarchy, sexism, so on. The second one is to develop a critical consciousness, and this is a lifelong process, certainly for me, a critical consciousness and cultural humility, in which we develop critical consciousness and cultural humility by involving and developing the ability to recognize and challenge Eurocentric biases and assumptions, and to appreciate diversity and complexity of so-named non-European cultures. The fact that we're even naming it non-European is putting European in the center, right? And perspectives. It also involves developing the skills to communicate and collaborate effectively with and across difference and sameness. Our third one is obviously is action. I shouldn't say obviously, this is our decision to promote social justice and equity. And to us, this is, to Sandra and I, this is crucial because we want to promote social justice and equity by taking out action to challenge and dismantle Eurocentric structures and practices that oppress. This involves advocating for the inclusion of so-called non-European perspectives in education and other domains, and promoting policies and practices that promote diversity, equity, equality, inclusion. And it also involves challenging Eurocentric ideologies and practices that perpetuate systems of oppression and inequality.
Cultural humility. I just, there's something about that we need right now, this hour, I think. And when we were thinking of, you're gonna share this beautiful piece by Gabor Mate. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
And we're gonna tie scat in there too. And let me tell the people what scat is, because we're gonna touch that, right? Scat is not a shoulda dio. That's not the scat we're talking about. SCAT is an acronym for saturation, conversion, application, and transformation. Saturation, conversion, application, and transformation. And there's a piece that Lorrie's going to read by a gentleman named Gabor Mate that just really moved me a lot. And I want you to just lean into it and listen carefully. And then we're going to tie it in for you. You ready for that piece?
Sure. Did you want to do the scat after or before? Or?
Well, yes, the saturation part, saturation, conversion, transformation, application. I did that wrong. SCAT, S for saturation, C for conversion. Application is the A and transformation is the T. And the work that I do has a lot to do with, of course, it's anti-oppressive work, implicit racial bias work, that kind of thing, how people show up, why they show up. And I had mentioned to Lorrie that I felt like, oppression comes by omission for a number of groups that are pushed into the margins. And when we get the content, we get trainings, learnings, and the piece you're going to hear when she's speaking through from this book, has a lot to do with things that were left out maybe for us that could have been better from we were in the womb. And I think it's glorious. That's the only word I can, because it's very scripturally based for me. It's very God-centered. It's about love and we can still do it today, even though we're not in the womb. We can't go back in there. But this piece is going to cover a lot of that. Now, the saturation, has everything to do with what she's going to read. The conversion, the application, and the transformation. And that's what the work that I do is about. Definitely the work that Lorrie does is about. It's about the same thing. And so I wanted to read this piece, and then I'm going to just grab a hold of Scat for a minute, and then she's going to go on to tie two really huge points in. And I'll remind you of those in case you forget, Lorrie.
So I admit that I have not finished this book. I'm only halfway through. It's called The Myth of Normal. Even the title is so profound. So The Myth of Normal, and the subtitle is Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture.
Good resource, guys, if anybody wants to jot it down.
Right. He wrote that when he was 80 with his son, so in 2022, so it's very new. And as I was going through the book, I mean, he has this amazing, both scientific and non-scientific, I don't know how else to say it, way of talking about how we're really ultimately all connected in individuals. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And he doesn't do it in a silo. He does it in this just profound integrated way. And through the first part of the book, he gives many studies on how this title is so, right?
Yeah.
And something that really struck me after he quotes many famous scientists, physicists, and does a beautiful job of speaking to our culture, and even inserts himself as a learner. Just beautiful in such a compassionate way. The mistakes maybe that he and his wife, I don't think he even calls it mistakes. They're consequences of the way that we are in the toxic culture that we live in. And then he has 3 children, and he asked his wife, and he himself, I believe, was an obstetrician, has done a lot of work in trauma, both large T and small t, and that's covered in the book too, and how that affects us as a culture and as individuals. And he shows various intersections on that. So now I'm going to read this profound piece that hit me. Okay. I recently asked Ray, that's his wife, if I could do it over again. I would have done so long before now. What would have supported her back then? While she was pregnant. I can't improve upon her wisdom, hers, nor the accuracy of her answer. It would have helped, she said, it would have helped if I had a community in place, if there existed a larger consensus in our culture of what is required to gestate a baby. It would have helped if I had a doctor or a social worker or family member who could have stood up for me if the doctor had asked me, even once, how I was faring emotionally. If anyone had phoned my husband, are you aware you are hurting your baby? Whatever problems you have with your wife, your role now is to be protective to her and of the infant she is carrying. We all need to realize that entering a pregnancy should be like entering a shrine, a sacred place and time. A baby is being built. Mental health needs to be on the curriculum as soon as woman gets pregnant. Just as there are prenatal classes for the physical birth, so should there be the emotional birth. The woman's focus must be on the baby and not on the husband or even the job. The husband's focus, everyone's focus, must be on supporting the woman. Parents need to know that their job is mutual, that while the wife is pregnant, the husband is also pregnant. Society needs to protect pregnant women because everybody is creating this child. It takes a world to make a baby. And then he goes on. And I just thought, what a understanding. And imagine now if we were living that.
I think that's amazing. To me, that's the scat. Like if you are protecting a child from in the womb, speaking, considering how, watching your temper, simple little things like that, what you're saying, what you're watching. You know, I can't imagine. That's the scat. That's the saturation that would have happened if you have a community. In some cultures, of course, they do. This is like the most important day in a woman's lifetime. It's not the wedding day. That's great too, but it's this opportunity to birth, to give life, and before that, to just that brought me to the place, Lorrie, where I felt like, oh my goodness. So I felt that way always, but not like that. It's like that life is in here, and I can saturate. I have the opportunity and the privilege to saturate this child with something magnificent or not.
Right.
Saturation, the conversion, that something can start happening in there, applying. You know what, even watching what I'm saying. People read to their children. A lot of women are doing this. I know you do that out there. And they sing to them. My mom said, that she cried a lot when she was pregnant with me. And she said, that's probably why you're so emotional. I've worked through a lot of that because I recognized it and had to look at it because it's important. So we can still do things, right? When we're out of the womb, we didn't have the community. We didn't have people speaking life into us. And, but we can still make some changes after that. And a lot of people do, but that I think could change lives. It can change children, a little baby.
And he actually gives studies about women that have been under stress, while the baby is, I'm sure people know about this,
Absolutely.
Before the child is born, and, they test 10,000 women and children, and the difference and the disparities of small t and large T trauma, how it's experienced.
Yeah.
And I love how he gets into, in terms of the toxic culture. We've talked about this before. It's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. But he goes even deeper, where it's what happened within you. Right. What are the different things that manifest collectively and individually in these various intersections of oppression?
I think that's beautiful. And we are spiritual beings. And that inside of you, it's fantastic. Who says there isn't a God? And I just give glory to the Most High God because of that experience. And you reading that to me, and we went through it yesterday, a couple of days now. And I just thought, oh my goodness, what couldn't we do? Next, I will look at the next pregnant woman I see. I'm going to look at her differently. And I'll say a prayer for her because I'm hoping that she will have that community surrounding her on that spiritual level. That's amazing to me. That's where the transformation starts, right? That saturation of the content, the community's giving, the father's giving, mother's giving, the conversion. That child is getting some sort of conversion happening in the womb. Application
is being bathed in love. And he said how in some indigenous and African cultures, for example, the man, if it happens to be a relationship with a man and a woman, that he, if he's angry, he's like pulled away from her. This time is sacred, and she has to be blasted with love. And he's not saying that you can't be angry, right?
Yes.
He is saying there are ways to intentionally have that discipline. That's not his word, that's how I interpreted it, of love. That was my interpretation of that.
Absolutely, for sure, because you might have a moment, you're going to upset, you're going to have your little arguments or whatever, but people will be aware of that because they're going to want more. So they're probably going to be able to push that side a little easier for the betterment of this child, the nurturing of this fetus. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And then when I think of then the, I mentioned the love, the oppression by omission. I had mentioned that to Lorrie because I think when we take certain people, so-called marginalized individuals, and we push them to the margins, is what that means.
And then name it.
Yes, right. I mean,
them.
What would it be like if we had this from? Because so oppression by omission. To me, oppression by omission is I've got beautiful friends, white, all kinds of colors. I notice it's so challenging because when we were doing our trainings, learnings, anti-oppression kind of work and biases that are challenging for people. But when you're close to individuals, white girls, my sister girls, whatever, you can talk about certain things and recognizing that it is not about blame or fault. It's not your fault or mine. Together we can do something about it. It's recognizing, as I was growing up, that we, as a Black young girl and as a Black woman, people don't mean to oppress you by omitting you. There's this omission. It's almost like a default because you're raised by your parents, say, to respect everybody. But all the other stuff comes into play. you're not really calling them the N-word or doing anything like that, but they're omitted from your sphere of thinking and thought and the way you see life. And I've noticed that as I've grown up and just speaking to my group of people, that yes, there's the overt, right? And then there's the implicit, the explicit for sure. But this omission is something we're taught. And so this, when you're talking about this whole thing in the womb, if we could even from today, can you imagine if we started to think of each other that way? Yes, not saying you're not going to see somebody's faults. People aren't going to irritate you, but we start to speak life into people. What would that be like? Like we really start to speak, we think about, wow, maybe just see people like they're in the womb, like a metaphor, just visually kind of visualize that. Speak life.
Right, because we're all growing. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. We are. And love is of God. And if you know love, you know God. That's a scripture. That's life. That's what I'm trying to live by. And love don't mean you don't get angry, right? Or it doesn't mean like you don't have stuff to work out. But that by Gabor Mate, that gave me an insight of what could be possible. Like I said, I feel like I'm on a journey to give birth to the person I'm actually supposed to become, and I'm feeling it. And I keep at it, and I feel the difficulty in it. I feel the dichotomy, the awesomeness of it. I don't know if you know what I mean, Lorrie. Does that make sense?
I do. What keeps coming in my mind is what we were talking about last night, and my heart, not just my mind. I told you this already, how your title, this was Sandra's title, not mine. I thought it was brilliant. Unrequited love and social justice.
Oh yeah, let's get into that.
Yeah, before we go.
Right, we think of that, and we think how people talk about because your boyfriend and he's cheating on you, whatever, right? And the love is unrequited, but I start to even thinking of that because my ex, I think to myself, both of them, if I saw them on the street, I really would want to give them a hug because I had to own me, and I love that. I love giving birth to the person I'm supposed to become. And I believe like right now, there's a love that I could give them that is real to me, very real to me. It's not about having them give me something now, right? So I've changed. I have to work out me. So I think when we're talking about unrequited love is love by force, I can't force anybody to think differently about my group of people, brown and black people or indigenous peoples, Korean people. We can't force this, right? But we can, in the best of these times and the worst that these times have as well, we can do our best to do our scat and saturate each other. Besides all of that unrequited love. So what are we going to do? Are we getting angry? Am I going to keep talking about white supremacy and this derogatory? We know what's going on. We already know the language. But how do we, if we feel like these people, they don't like me, they're just pushing me into the margins, I'm sick of it. I don't know, Lorrie, like, is love by force? Like, what does that look like?
I see love as a force.
Like it.
I'm not, I would want to understand more about what you mean by love by force. Cause I mean, even the touchy-feely love that you talked about earlier, I don't know if that's how you said it. I mean, it's either there or it's not. And I mean, that we could write books on that. They've been written.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I mean, the emotional part of love, like if someone's going to leave you and you're desperate, I've been there, someone's going to leave you. You just get this desperateness, but in that desperateness, you need healing. I'm not saying it's not difficult, horrible for sure. But the desperateness is something that you get to tap into if you so choose and bring healing, an incredible amount of healing in your own life, the desperateness for another human being. So I think of you're trying to say you're desperate. Oh, please stay. Oh my God, don't do this to me. And I'm not making light of it. I'm really not, because it was not light when I went through it. Okay. So, but in that's why I'm here saying I'm giving birth to the person that I know I'm supposed to become. I love that. So go ahead. You got something.
No, you get me excited, so I can't keep cutting you. You're juxtaposing the wholeness and the whole of desperation, right? HOLE, and then the wholeness of what's possible when you heal. And often it's
I like that.
all there at the same time, right?
Yes, it is.
So
It
you
is.
really got me thinking. I've said this before on some of your other shows, where you inspire me so much that I started thinking, like, I think I know what unrequited love is in the context of trauma and because mental health's been a big part of my career, and as you know, and
Mhm.
so I just started sort of writing some stuff to myself. What is unrequited love? And I'm just throwing this out. This is just a first draft. In the context of oppression and trauma, might be referring to a so-called one-sided experience of love. And I'll tell you why I said so-called in a minute. Affection or attraction that's not reciprocated
Yes.
by the object of those feelings. And then if it's a pattern, right, in the context of trauma or oppression, it might stem from childhood wounds, attachment disruptions,
Absolutely.
unmet developmental needs that become projected onto relationships. So when I've done coaching, for example, whether it's a spiritual life consultation or more of the DEI stuff, there are patterns in which, say, a man marries the same woman 5 times, meaning the pattern, right? I'm exaggerating, but sometimes
Of course.
a pattern 2 or 2 times or whatever. We're trying to create that attachment, heal that wound from our history.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I've often said we all have places of oppression and privilege within us. So when we've been pushed to the margins, we might idealize relationships and mix it up, love and power, right? So people who hold more power
Mm-hmm.
and privilege, there might be a subconscious survival strategy or response to trauma, where we're maybe attracted to somebody more or less powerful, depending on what our pattern is and what we're wanting, right? Maybe there's a connection in oppression or a connection in pain. Yeah, I get that. It's you and me against the sorrows of the world, as opposed to you and me for the sorrows of the world. That's Marianne Williamson's work, right? When feelings are intense, still in the same context, but unreciprocated, it reinforces core wounds, which is the desperation, right? What's happening, what you talked about earlier, tied to a sense of unworthiness or inadequacy stemming from oppression. And if you look at this in the larger social devaluation, larger context, sometimes this dynamic mirrors broader social devaluation, neglect, and abuse with multiple structures like family, dominant structures and norms, which we've talked about over the number of times we've talked together. These interpersonal wounds reflect and reinforce systemic ones. So it's kind of all kind of mixed up. So this idea of trauma, illness, and healing in a toxic culture. And then we go through cycles of shame and self-blame. And, maybe we can grieve the fantasy of reciprocation of that original wherever.
Yes.
So that's maybe a start to the healing. We could go on about this, but I'll finish with this point, that we can grieve the fantasy of reciprocation to start the healing where we didn't get it, right? And start to move towards healing. And what you were just talking about, the compassion for oneself and reclaiming, well, the dignity was always there, but reclaiming it in action, right?
Yes.
Through work and restoring the capacity for self-love and mutual love, no longer tying it to oppression. That's challenging while the oppression still exists. So that's a whole. What do you think?
I love it. I'm looking at the ways. I remember in the desperate moments, and a lot of this is, I call it subliminal seduction for real, because we kind of watch things on television. We get seduced by that idiot box. Sorry, because I'm such an idiot. And it saturates. And we think what we're watching is real.
Yeah.
And we know logically it's not, but we actually spiritually ingest some of this stuff. And we walk away and it's manifesting all over our space. And one of the things that really helped me, and everybody does not have this, but there's a lot of ways and that you can find this. Lorrie being one of the experts. I've got a few friends that are therapists that are amazing at this work.
Just on the I'm an attorney, not an expert.
So one of the interesting things that really helped me, and I really had to come to grips with it, was that my father loved me. That I laugh because I just came to that understanding a few days ago. I was thinking, wow, I mean, nothing's perfect because there's pros and cons to, but he always, and my sister, my brother always say, oh, you're his favorite. You're his favorite. But I seem to have bounced back on certain things because, of course, I looked at myself. That love somehow caused me to look at me, that I wasn't so afraid to lean into the yuckiness that I saw that needed to be changed or fixed or healed, and growth, having a therapist in my life and really like the growth that it takes for us to come to a place where we're feeling I'm giving birth to the person I'm supposed to become. I feel like that. And I genuinely know as I go back, one of the foundation for me was my father's love. In fact, then it's silly because he did favor me, because I was younger than the rest of other three. But anyway, that was a big thing for me to go there. And it was easier for me to do healing. And healing is lifelong. So when you mentioned that, that's what came to me, the healing part of that. And then putting that with social justice, if someone calls me an N-word, which has happened in my life, and a lot of us it has happened, or you've insulted our Indigenous brothers and sisters more than just breaking treaties, but you've insulted their person. And I think, why do people do that?
Race their people.
Why is it is there this oppression by omission? Because we're not allowing ourselves to grow and learn and to embrace people and think, can you tell me about your people? What can we talk about that? Like, so there's so much to this love and social justice. So is it by force? Now you should just love me. You should just respect me. There's a real reciprocity there, though, right? First have this relationship and to admit, I heard this about your people. Get a relationship going, perhaps. I heard that and I was afraid of you, or I just didn't understand. Like just that reciprocity of breaking that kind of barrier, right? And getting saturated in the truth. I mentioned my Indigenous friend that came on here. I have to have her on again. It was a wonderful couple of shows we did. Just understanding, the fact that, yes, I was ignorant. It's okay. I don't have to stay there, so the love and the social justice, the reciprocity, you know what I'm saying? Like that's so important, that piece, when you think about it. It isn't by force, and I can't force. And first we build relationships and we try and let me understand where you're coming from here. What did I think about? There's only very few people that are going to be honest with me about what they thought of Black people, say, or what they thought of, what did I really think of Indigenous people? Did you actually think that they just drink 24 hours a day and you've painted everybody with this brush? Do you think Black people, I don't know, there's some horrible things that we think, that we've heard, that we've watched on television, that we've seduced about, our parents taught us. Unfortunately, we take it with us into this time warp and pass it on to our children. So that's sort of the heart of, for me, of SCAT, of getting that information. That whole piece you read on Gabamate, how can we help each other now in the womb that we're not in, but spiritually speaking?
Right. And it's a process of deprogramming, because it's, racism, imperialism, racial capitalism, all the ones we've mentioned on a number of our podcasts. These are intergenerational projects and ideologies and systems, right? And, so unpacking it is a daily process of coming into our own authenticity collectively and individually. Like every act of freedom and liberation in the face of these systems of oppression are acts of coming into our own authenticity and our own ability to love ourselves. I mean, one of the three of the key points that you and I were talking about was, if you think about it as love as a discipline, is like the story you told about your uncle. If I remember the story correctly, you were tired and many years, and you thought you're going for 10 minutes. You decided, no, this is about love. I mean, I don't want to tell your story. You can say it.
Yeah, no, I had gone to see my uncle. I love that, because that is certainly speaks to what we speak about and what you talk about, the discipline of love, because really it is definitely a discipline. So I went to see my uncle. He's in a home. He's getting care. And I didn't want to go because we don't have that connection. He has been estranged from the family for 25 years. And I thought, oh, it's not like it's my dad, whom I love, my daddy, but it's my uncle. And he's great. Respect him, love him, because that's what we're supposed to, kind of thing. And I wouldn't want anything harm to come to him. But going there and spending all that time, and it takes me so long to get there, So I went and I said, I'm just going to, hey, how are you? Okay. I just wanted to, put my hand up and say, I'm here. I showed up. You see me? I see you. I know you are here and I'm going. So, but something hit me. And that was that, Sandra, it was almost that practice what you preach. You're doing this work, and more than that, I wanted the experience of, and this is where we need community. Because the fact that my sister or family members would say, well, how much time did you spend with Uncle? And you might think that it should just come from me. Love don't work like that. The womb thing is here with us. Putting that into, if we don't have it from the womb, we can get it even now. So the fact that I started to think about my community, and it gave me an absolute responsibility from the core of myself, thinking, that is causing you, that community, what they've instilled in you, you need to sit down, girl, and stay. And I spent over an hour with him. And that's big for me. I've been gone in 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I just sat there. And then last time I just went last week, and I brought something for him to eat. It was different things he loved, some raw peanuts. He loved those, and some plantain chips. And we had a nice time just sitting there. I thought, this is what I need to do. Yes. And love is not saying that, yes, I could be doing other things, Lorrie. I could be doing other things. But say that to yourself. That's great. Lean into it. But I need to be here because community has taught me that saturation, conversion, application, transformation. I'm in the womb. I've put myself back in the womb after that piece by Gabor Mate. Fabulous. Now I understand. I'm speaking to myself in this womb, and I'm giving myself some nurturing. And I'm sitting here. I'm going to make myself sit right here. Just
right. And I remember you talking about how you ended up laughing together, which was something that, because you nurtured that, it became more communal on both an individual and a collective level. It was I don't know if you would label it as healing, right? But
I would. I really would. I would. And when you talk about that whole thing with speaking to a woman, speaking to the child when it's in the womb, and singing to it and laughing with it, praying for it, being giving a kiss. You have little siblings coming up and giving the kiss to mommy's naked tummy. And I just think that's beautiful stuff. I just felt like that community was with me in a sense where I could think, okay, yeah, it might not be coming from you, but it is still coming from you. It's coming into you so that you can, because you're experiencing the responsibility of the discipline of love. So you want to talk more about the discipline of love? I think it's a wonderful.
Sure. I've got a whole bunch of stuff here. We've got about 20 minutes left, I think.
Oh, you go, girl.
So, I mean, three key points that we talked about is you and I, that love takes practice, and you just gave a beautiful example, and it ended up becoming a very enriching process. It's not just an emotion, it's also an intent and a skill developed through mindfulness, through deliberate effort over time. And Bell Hooks talks about when we understand love as action, we know that spirit and ethics go hand in hand, cultivating qualities like empathy, compassion, and forgiveness. And that takes work, right?
Yeah.
And I'll give examples in a moment. There's the self-love piece, right? In a collective context, it can facilitate collective love. If we're accepting compliments rather than push, like if you give me a compliment and I'm pushing it off, I'm actually insulting you, right? Because there's something lovely you're telling me. I understand that it's more complicated than that, and that there's a healing process.
Sure.
And in my case, both in the collective context and even in the family, I know that my parents love us. I believe that now. And I didn't get what I needed. So from a post-traumatic growth context, I thought, wow, this helped me grow. right? And even though there were some hard experiences, and it's moving me more to a deeper form of self-love, other than just an individual, like wear your makeup and look nice and get married, which I'm not. But I mean, there's different stories that people have.
Yeah.
It's not my story. And as a consequence, I'm doing this kind of work. Actually, when my father was very sorrowful and apologetical, he was still alive. I said, Dad, that's the very thing that brought me here.
Mm.
That pain, healing from that pain, right?
Mm.
And there were two kinds of forgiveness. One was where I was letting it go, right? Because it's a gift to myself. Another was that he was asking for forgiveness. And so then it became more of a descendant healing between us.
Mm.
So that self-love then started growing in this incredible garden,
I
right?
love that you're feeling that right now. The experts are always welcoming healing. It's so important.
Love also sustains struggles for justice in addressing or sometimes fighting oppression.
Sustains.
It's draining. It can be draining, and collective love within our communities that we're working within provide emotional refuge to energize and comfort each other in hard times. And I've already said this before, but I just love it. Cornell West reminds us that justice is what love looks like in public.
Oh, don't we just love him? We should play a clip of his one time on the show or before the show. Just great stuff.
Yeah, and it's the heart of the social justice discipline. Right?
What's the heart of the social justice discipline?
Justice is what, love is the heart, can be the heart of the social justice and love being a discipline. So it's how we can nurture it within ourselves and share it with each other.
Yes.
This action can help us heal, sustain our activism, and move us toward equity and liberation and consciousness to deeper and deeper places of peace. And with mindful practice, life can change ourselves and society. So then I started thinking about, there's so many pieces here. I'm trying to look at the time.
Oh, you take it. It's don't worry. I won't say anything else.
What are some of the discipline of love compels us to see our shared humanity and sacred worth, which is dignity, collectively, individually, spiritually, everything. It provides the foundation and fuel for creating an equitable society free from systems of oppression. With love as our guide, justice can become a living practice. So I won't do all 10, but I have 10 key points.
Can you start with some of them?
Sure. Commitment. You just make a commitment.
That's a practice, one of the practices, right?
Yeah. It requires dedication to care for each other beyond feelings or convenience. Like where we do it, like when I was visiting a client, I've told the story before, who became a friend, not a personal friend, a friend. I don't know what else, I don't want the F word form on it, right? And he was dying of with AIDS, and he was in his last days, and I was visiting him at the hospital, and he was so surprised that I would come. And he wasn't lonely. He had a beautiful community, and I happened to love him. And at the end, he says, it's okay. I started going every day because I just wanted to be there till the end if he would allow me. And then he said, it's okay. You don't have to come anymore. So it was a bit of a pinch, but it was okay. Right. And then one of his family members came up to me afterward at the memorial and said how much it meant to him. I only went because it called me. It wasn't some plan to save somebody. It just, I felt a love, and I listened to the calling like you did with your uncle. Whether you're caring for an ailing parent, and you're doing it, or a client or a friend, that's how we those are just examples. There are many. It can also be love as a discipline, can be courage. I mean, that's why I Get Braver Incorporated, my business. Loving in the face of fear, criticism, or apathy can demand courage. Discipline gives us strength to love boldly, right? So for
what number are we on?
2.
Number 2. And what was number 2? Discipline, right?
So how love can be a discipline. So the second one was courage. There's so many, but those are just some of mine that I try to work at. Not try. Trying is a noble way of failing. My friend Akila taught me that.
It does take courage. It really does.
Yeah. Tell me more.
Go ahead.
No, tell me more. I just.
I had a thought, and I was thinking, I was coming a little late for work, and I had to really contemplate this because I am not late for work. I am my father's child that way. I get there very early, not sometimes, once in a blue moon, I might be just on time, or I could be late, maybe 2 minutes or something, right? But it's something that happens to me when I see people, we're getting paid the same, we're working the same job, and I just see people coming late. It really bothers me. And I kind of had to tap into that. And it was bothering me so much. I said, Sandra, find out first why it's bothering you. Because I really wanted to, would have never done this in a million years, addressed this or mentioned this to someone. Never. I would have just grumbled. And I thought, but that's not about loving yourself. What's the point? You're grumbling, and it's not about God's love in you that you so believe in. So you're grumbling and saying, oh, they shouldn't have coming late. What are you doing about it? Do you want to do something about it? Did you want to mention something to them? No, I can't do that, but I can grumble under my breath. But love came in a different manner. And in a very nice way, we had a conversation one time, said, the traffic. And I said, listen, well, why don't you try leaving earlier? And I just said it just so. I didn't have to say anything else. Well, and the person knows I'm sweet, but everybody, we can sort of hide behind what people think of us too, and not really bring out the rest of us. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And then I just realized that the person got the understanding. I said, maybe you could try coming a little earlier. And I mentioned that because you are new and there's directors here and management here. So I want to share this with you because it could be that they may be intolerant of that, and that was it. But I just felt, okay, enough said. I can go back to my desk now. I feel great because it was not done to hurt the person, but it was just done. It was straightforward, but caring. And when you mentioned that, I just thought love can be something else because I'm watching that things like that don't leave me sit with me. They're bitter. They're whatever. There may be something I can do. Maybe there's something I can't do. Right. Depending on where I'm at.
Right. There's this whole piece around in different projects that have called around civility in the workplace, and you're going way beyond civility, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to a deeper place of it's not even really about self-control. You could call it that, right? But it feels like you're going to a place of which is kind of my third point, actually, to a place of emotional intelligence where there's a piece where you might be managing the emotion while you're going through the healing process, and then you went to a deeper place of emotional intelligence, and what the context is, and that this person might be harmed because there's a very specific expectation. And you felt close enough and brave enough to use your emotional intelligence and heal yourself in that moment and also share something with that person. It's up to them what they do. And I suspect if it kept happening, it might not bother you anymore because you've done your piece and
yes,
and you've figured it out, right?
And especially if you realize, like for me, someone is new. And if they feel they got an inch and then they got a yard, like nobody's saying anything, so it must be fine. And that wouldn't be fair because something would happen. Maybe they get a bad evaluation or someone, they were late all the time. And I knew that and I wasn't able to tap into love. So I may say something or may not, however that looked. But for me, it was a part of a manifestation of parts of me that are being healed,
Right. And it's really great that the person was able to hear it because you could have got the bravery comes in that you could have had any response. I'm sure you use your intuition too. You're not going to go up to somebody that's too prickly, right? So
I love it. And that prickliness girl, no, this person was unprickly. And I just, you're right. That would have been a different ballgame. Yeah.
Right. And that's another point in terms of discipline is insight. It's a discipline. Discipline of insight cultivates self-awareness to love wisely, which is what you did in that moment. And we begin to understand our capacity and our limitations. An example of that might be knowing when we've reached the limit of our emotional reserves. So maybe I'm going to go home and rest because, okay, that's the 5th time I've said that. And maybe I've been affecting change. But if I keep being the one that's speaking, then I get codified as an egg and I'm not allowing people to grow on their own. It's like I'm taking over, right?
That's perfect.
Effort. How do we come to a place for loving those different from us? It takes work to expand our worldview.
Emotional intelligence, can you kind of give us a little clarity around that? I love that.
Well, there's a whole piece on it and a course on it too, but basically you manage your emotion. Well, you're about to be reactive and you respond to a person in connection, right? You respond to a person in Gabor Mate talks about the base of the intellect of the cognitive aspect of ourself is emotion. Now, if we've experienced trauma, for example, small t, most of us have, right? Small t or large t, then we all have places of reactivity. So it's emotionally intelligent, I think, to heal that, right? There are actual books written on it. And then in the moment, you just did an emotionally intelligent thing where you said, well, how much this is my stuff? Like, when am I, you didn't say that, but it might be implicit. When am I like that? When am I late a couple of minutes or whatever? Or was I at another time like that? And maybe this is bugging me now because I'm, and so you're working through that piece, but you're also responding with love and respect in a way that's peaceful, in a way that sort of tunes into what's going on for that person. So you would respond to a prickly person in a different way. There's an agility to dealing with your emotions and your intellect at the same time. Right?
Yeah, I kind of felt like I was trying to regulate those emotions so I wouldn't be at the mercy of those behaviors, so I wouldn't get up and, I'm going to say something. But what does that do? Sometimes I think sitting with it for counting to 10 or 20 or 100 if you need to. Because it could be stuff you got to, trying to get your discipline for yourself in love at that moment. I love that.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, if you want, if that interests you, I do have a piece, like some key 10 key points. We don't have to do the 10, but around emotional intelligence and how that plays itself out in the workplace. But just using your example of that agility. And
we could have a show on that because you do need some emotional intelligence in the workplace.
I would love that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was just going to the piece where I was, and there's much more. We could unpack just that moment that you talked about of that agility to just come from a place of grace and respect and dignity.
Yeah. Because Lorrie, I could literally feel myself kind of going, coming late. I work hard around here. I work so hard. I come on time. And then they said, well, give yourself a pat on the back, Sandra. I felt like there was... my Heavenly Father was saying, okay, so you come, good for you. You've learned to do that from your father. Not everybody has the same, you know what I mean? Oh, that's not instilled in everybody. So what are you going to do that's going to be helpful? I just love that. The emotional intelligence.
That's emotional intelligence, what you just said. Or catching yourself and saying, like, if you're getting upset with somebody that you're very familiar with, well, would I treat my boss this way? Would I treat the boss? Would I treat
your boss?
Well, that's my point. Yeah, thank you. You said that better. I keep saying it. It's so ingrained. And am I being kind to the supervisor because I'm genuinely kind, or because I want to stay in their favor? I mean, those are two different sponsoring emotions and motivations. But if the motivation is to be loving.
Okay, sweetheart, We're coming to the end of the show, and you know what? Now, because we're gonna get a little clip for you. I got to remember to do that because I think the clips are great. I love the clips. Can we remember that we are on? I'm gonna put it down. Unrequited love. Yes, we might want to touch on that again. Love is a discipline, because I think we can unpack the discipline of that a little bit more, because I think people would really want to get into that.
Sure.
I do. I want to get into it in my life, and I suspect that our viewers do too, because it's not so easy as you think, especially if we have to get some of that instilled, just by speaking to someone, or resources. You want to read about it. I mean, some of the resources that you present out here, Lorrie, some of them are really good. You might want to bring some of those too, because people may want to tap into some of those, pick some of those up.
Sure. I would be honored. Thank you.
This has been a great time, Lorrie. I just like the reality of it. I like talking about SCAT, saturation, conversion, application, transformation. I love adding the love is a discipline to social justice. And maybe we can do that. Actually, maybe we can do that a little more too.
Okay.
Like putting the love and the social justice, the discipline of that together, and connecting that. I'll put it here. Unrequited love and social justice, and love is a discipline and social justice. I think that would be great for us. Woo. And today, best of times, the worst of times, but we're responsible for ourselves, our community, but we're first responsible for here, like what's happening in here. And before God and man, what am I doing to give birth to the best person that I can become? Thank you so much for joining us. Sandra McKechnie, this is our guest. I know people might think, oh, she used to have that woman on that show, that white woman on that show for so long,
Tell me when.
It's been some good information, and I really enjoy it very much, because it's very same with what I get into and I do. But I hope you will join us again, and I hope it's been a good experience for you. Have a wonderful weekend, and all the best. Sandra McKechnie, your host, coming to you from prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. Take care.
Thank you.